In a previous video, I gave you the 5 mistakes that kill a short film submission in the first 10 seconds. Hundreds of you went back and fixed your opening. Today, we go further, because the judge doesn't stop evaluating after 10 seconds. They're watching your entire film for signals. 7 mistakes from before you press submit to your final frame that get short film rejected. I've managed festivals programming across the US, Canada, Europe, and the Middle East. I've been in screening rooms when judges deliberate. I've read the written notes after a committee session ends. I know the exact language programmers use when a film doesn't advance, and I know what they're looking for when it does. What follows are not opinion. They are patterns that I've observed across thousands of submissions. Mistake number 7, the logline mismatch. Let's begin before the film even plays. Before a festival judge watches a single frame of your film, they read your synopsis. That synopsis creates an expectation, a genre, a tone, a type of story. When your film doesn't match that expectation, not in content, but in feel, something breaks. The judges trust in the filmmaker's intentionality. I've read synopses describing intimate family dramas, then watched the film open like a horror sequence. I've read synopses promising dark comedy, then watched 40 minutes of unbroken tragedy. In each case, the filmmaker knew their film. They assumed the synopsis reflected it. It often didn't. The fix is counterintuitive. Write your logline last, after picture lock, after you know what the film actually became, not what you intended when you started writing. One sentence, genre, protagonist, stakes, transformation. If you cannot write that sentence clearly, the film may not be ready to submit. Mistake number 6, dialogue-driven exposition. It's your first act. 2 characters meet. One says something like, ever since your mother died 3 years ago, this family hasn't been the same. The other nods. This is called on-the-nose exposition. Festival judges recognize it immediately, and it signals one thing. The filmmaker hasn't found a visual way to communicate backstory. They've defaulted to characters explaining their world to each other, which is not how people speak and not how cinema works. Cinema is compression. Every frame carries information. If your audience needs to know something about the past, ask whether a location, a photograph, a gesture, or a single silent beat can communicate it faster and with more impact than dialogue. When dialogue is doing all your exposition, your film is transcribing a stage play. Judges feel that distinction. We're going deeper than most filmmaking channels go on with this. Mistakes 3 and 2 are the ones nobody talks about. Mistake number 5, runtime overshoot. Festival programmers build schedules. They slot films into blocks, typically 15, 30, or 60-minute windows. When your short film runs 18 minutes, but your genre typically screens in a 15-minute block, you've created a programming problem. A programmer is not going to restructure their schedule for a film they haven't selected yet. They will find a film that fits. Runtime overshoot is an invisible rejection. It will never appear in feedback, but it happens. There's a second dimension. In the short film format, there is an expected relationship between runtime and the weight of the story you're telling. A 20-minute short film must justify 20 minutes the emotion complexity, the character depth, the structural integrity to earn that runtime. Most don't. Most 20-minute short films are 12-minute films that weren't edited. The fix is painful. Cut until it hurts. Then cut a little more. The shorter version of your film is almost always the better film. Mistake number 4, this sound design collapse. I've spoken before about broken audio in the first 10 seconds. This is different. This is what happens when audio starts strong and falls apart through the film. Music calibrated for the edit, but overwhelming dialogue in the final mix. Sound effects that don't match the physical space. Room tone that cuts out between shots, creating an unnatural silence that pulls the audience out of the scene. Dialogue that peaks in an emotional climax because no one checked the levels before export. Festival selections are screened on professional playback systems. What sounded acceptable on your laptop speakers will be exposed immediately in a screening room. Judges hear what your mix actually is, not the version you imagined. Before you submit, do a final audio pass through headphones and a reference speaker simultaneously. Check one thing specifically, your dialogue to music ratio. If the music ever competes with the voice, the music loses, no matter how good it is. Mistake number 3, no protagonist arc. This is the mistake number 1 that I see often in technically accomplished films. Beautiful cinematography, clean audio, strong opening, and then the protagonist ends the film in the same emotional place they started. Festival judges are story professionals. They evaluate whether a film moved someone specifically, whether the protagonist was transformed by the events of the story, not necessarily changed for the better. Transformation doesn't require a happy ending. It requires that something irreversible happened internally to your character. When that character is absent, the film feels like a sequence of competently photographed events. Technically proficient, emotionally flat. Before your next edit, write 2 sentences. One describing where protagonist begins emotionally. One describing where they end. If those sentences are identical, or if you can't write them, your script has a structural problem that no technical craft will fix. Mistake number 2, the unearned ending. Because the ending feels powerful when you make it. You've lived with this story. You know what it means. You know why the final image lands. But judges are watching your film for the first time, and they are evaluating one question above all. Does this ending feel inevitable in retrospect? The best endings in cinema creates a specific sensation. When you reach the final frame, you feel this was the only way the story could have ended. Not because you predicted it, but because everything before it made it true. That sensation requires setup, specific images, specific dialogue choices, specific character behavior in Act 1 that seem unremarkable, until the ending arrives and reveals their purpose. If your final scene contains a revelation that wasn't planted, an emotional turn that wasn't earned through character work, or a resolution that doesn't connect back to one established at the beginning, judges feel it. They can't always explain why. They'll write the ending felt flat in their stories. The fix, before you shoot, map your ending backwards. What must be true in Act 1 for this ending to feel inevitable? Planted there. Mistake number 1, wrong festival, wrong film. This is the mistake that costs filmmakers the most money and generates the least insight. When you submit your dark experimental narrative to a festival that programs commercial genre shorts, you are not rejected because the film was bad. You are rejected because it was the wrong film for the wrong room. Programmers curate. They are not searching for the best film. They are searching for the best film for their specific audience, their sponsors, their programming identity. A film can be exceptional and still be wrong for a given festival. Before you submit anywhere, research 3 things. First, the award history. What films have won in the festival in your category over the last 3 years? Second, the jury composition. Who is making these decisions? Industry professionals, community members, genre specialists. Third, the programming balance. Does this festival screen experimental work, debut films only, international productions? Film Freeway makes it very easy to submit everywhere. This is a trap. A targeted submission to 12 well-researched festivals will outperform mass submission to 60 in virtually every case. 7 mistakes that get short film rejected. Number 7, the logline mismatch. Write your synopsis after picture log. Number 6, dialogue-driven exposition. Use the visual medium. Number 5, runtime overshoot. Cut until it hurts, then cut more. Number 4, the sound design collapse. Mix for a screening room, not your laptop. Number 3, no protagonist arc. Something must change internally. Number 2, the unearned ending, planted in Act 1. Number 1, wrong festival, wrong film. Research before you submit. Your film represents months of work, hundreds of decisions, and real creative investment. It deserves a submission strategy that is as deliberate as the filmmaking itself. If this helped, subscribe. I share practical knowledge from inside the industry, from someone who has been in the selection room, not just studied it from the outside. Drop a comment. Which of these 7 mistakes did you recognize in your own work? I read everyone.